Hello and welcome to this very special interview. Joining me today is Dr. Raghuram Rajan, former RBI governor, a renowned global economist, a youth icon, and once you read his book, the latest, he's written a few before, you'll also realize a true patriot. Thank you very much, Dr. Rajan, for talking to Zee Media.
Thank you.
When I went through your book, and of course there are a lot of issues that we'll talk about pertaining to India, one sense that I got was that, at least on 4 occasions, you've pointed out that what you said was not the way it was interpreted to be. Whether it was the Make in India bit, whether it was, the Hitler bit, whether it was the blind, the one-eyed, and so on and so forth. But there are at least 4 occasions where you've sounded fairly disappointed with the manner in which words that came out of you without being read fully, and you've given us the opportunity to actually now read in detail. They were just blown out of proportion. They were completely, kept in a different spin altogether. Is that something that, really affected you, disappointed you, and why do you think that happened so often?
Well, so first is I gave about a speech a month, which I discovered was about the rate at which Janet Yellen speaks, ex-RBI governor, and each speech had to be somewhat different because I tried repeating the same speech, and I found that the press then took it as an indication of emphasis. If I repeated the same speech, I was trying to harp on a theme. And you can't speak on monetary policy continuously, because if you start speaking on monetary policy, you invariably start confusing people because they start reading nuances into words and so on. So you have to say once in a while what the broad direction is, but you can't. So what do you speak on? Well, you have to choose different topics related to your role. And one of the things I point out in the book is I felt the role of the RBI governor was more than just a regulator sitting somewhere in Mumbai. As a central bank governor, controlling the reserves, controlling monetary policy, and controlling the lender of last resort function, you were essentially the person who could intervene in a crisis. And therefore you wanted to make the chance of a crisis much less. Crisis prevention is as good, if not better, than crisis management. But it does worry you that when things are taken out of context, it looks quite different. Now, why this happens, some of it is, you're trying to offer nuance, and nuance is very hard to communicate publicly. So instead of saying half of this and 50% of that, in communicating what you said, people like to say this or that. And that becomes much more black and white than you intended. Nothing is really black and white. And then on top of that, when you say that, you want to use adjectives which make it even firmer. So instead of suggests that this should happen, Rajan blasts so-and-so, and Rajan slams so-and-so. Language becomes important and nuance is lost. On social media, of course, there are organized groups who try and move in certain directions. That I think we've come to believe is par for the course.
But it wasn't just social media, right? In the sense, the perception that came about was that you are questioning government policy, you're questioning the head of the executive of this country, a popular leader. And when you read through, and I wish people do read through finally, what you were actually saying, you were not attacking an individual, you were not attacking a government. You were, with facts and data to back you, making a viewpoint of what you believed. But it got seen as, and in fact I had written and I had said, I don't know if you agree with that word, I had said, you're someone as RBI governor trying to show the mirror to society, to government. However, it got seen as you being anti-government.
Yes.
And that, I think, was a perception. Do you think it was deliberately created because you had ministers reacting to these news reports, and it just became as if Dr. Rajan has a problem with the government.
Yeah, no, I think that it became a narrative which was it was easy to fit things into, when in fact I kept sort of trying to. So sometimes I was surprised. I leave a venue having given a speech, in fact the Make in India speech especially, which I thought was an endorsement about making in India, which I thought was very important.
In fact, the headline, as you say, said largely for India.
Yeah.
It never said don't make in India.
It was make in India, and the point was who's going to buy this? And I thought in an environment where global growth was weak, that it was probably at this point overly optimistic to believe foreign markets would buy what we made. So let us focus on making domestically for the domestic market. And then, and this is what everybody missed, the whole point of the speech is if we want to increase domestic demand, we have to focus on macro stability, because otherwise it will be unsustainable. So let's create a macro stable, strong domestic demand to buy the stuff that our producers are making. Let's create the environment for those producers, which is what I thought Make in India meant. So I didn't think I was, in a sense, going against the government. I was merely saying, at this point, let's not put all our baskets in the export-led growth model. That was a detail that some people interpreted the Make in India to be, and I didn't think that was essential to the Make in India story. But it was, again, Rajan flays, Rajan slams, this, that, says make for India rather than make in India. Where are you going to make for India other than in India? You're going to make for India abroad? It just didn't make logical sense. But this got a life of its own. That said, I don't want to. It's all too easy to criticize the press.
इसका इफेक्ट आप अगली बार भी आएंगे तो इसी तरह ही बोलेंगे.
नहीं, अगर आप बोलना बंद करते हैं तो आप देश को एक डिसर्विस कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि जब गलत जगह जा रही है देश, तो अगर आप बोलेंगे नहीं तो,
खासकर जब आप आरबीआई गवर्नर हैं, तो जब
आप पब्लिक सर्वेंट हैं और एक ऊंचे पद में हैं, तो आपको बोलना चाहिए, क्योंकि जब कोई नहीं बोलता है तो गवर्नमेंट को पता नहीं चलता है कि हम गलत जगह जा रहे हैं.
डॉक्टर राजन, डिमोनेटाइजेशन पर आप काफ़ी कुछ कह भी चुके हैं पिछले 8-10 दिन में, तो मैं ज़्यादा उसमें नहीं जाऊंगा, लेकिन एक रेफरेंस देना चाहूँगा जो आपने अपनी बुक में लिखा है. ये आपकी 2014 की स्पीच थी, और उसमें यू सेड black money hoarders find ways to divide their hoard into many smaller pieces. ये 2014 में आपने कहा था, जब किसी लेक्चर में आपसे पूछा गया था डिमोनेटाइजेशन पर आपकी क्या राय है. And if you see, that's exactly what has happened. The black money has come back into the system because we thought people are going to dump it into the river or burn the cash. Well, instead all they've done is they've just broken it into smaller pieces and it's found its way back into the system. और क्योंकि आप काफ़ी इस मुद्दे पर कह चुके हैं, लेकिन मैं सिर्फ आपसे इस जो आपने जो पैराग्राफ आपने अपनी स्पीच से इसमें डाला है, जो इतना प्रोफेटिक था और वही हम देख रहे हैं, तो आप ये कहेंगे कि ये डिस्कशन भी हुई, आपने ओरली भी बताया सरकार को, और ये बहुत बड़ी गलती होगी, या क्या आप मानते हैं कि अगले कुछ सालों में अब जब ये पैसा क्योंकि आ गया है सिस्टम में, तो अगर इनकम टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट एक्चुअली एक जेन्युइनली टेक्नोलॉजी फ्रेंडली वे से अगर काम करे, जो आपने ऑल्टरनेटिव्स की भी बात की, और अगर आप उस पर बता पाएं कि what would have been the better way? Would the better way have been that, like in global markets, you have IT departments which rely more on technology, data analysis, and I think I was reading a book by one of the leading tax experts of this country who said that in India not even 10% of the IT officers are even savvy with technology. Would that have been the better way of going about it rather than doing this?
See, hindsight can be 20/20. You look back and you say, well, since all the money, a lot of the money came in, the idea that it would stay out may have been unwarranted. But of course, you don't know up front. But I think when you combine economics with knowledge of how we Indians behave, we know Indians manage. We live in a difficult economy. some of the time. And so we know how to get around things. We know how, I mean, if you did this in Germany, they would all sort of, perhaps come up with their money and say, please tax me. India, we know how to, hum jugaad karna jante hain. So, as a result, I think we need to think of ways that are immune to that, but also which have, as you said, relatively low transaction costs for the genuine, honest taxpayer. We have to worry that any new thing we put on increases the costs significantly. And if we can use IT to reduce that, I mean, if you want people to declare bank accounts, can they do it once instead of declaring it every year? Is there an IT-friendly way they can do that? So, what I think you see elsewhere is better use of the data. In a situation of big data, can we, as you said, look at all the data that is available and develop pattern recognition structures? We have such bright IT people. Can they develop methods of recognizing, okay, this looks like a suspicious set, all these assets, all these accounts, and no taxes? Can we link up families? So, yes, you can have 3 kids and you sort of separate things there. What is the overall holding? What is the tax position of the overall? But do this in a way which doesn't lead to witch hunts. Can this be done by machine? And nobody except very few people have access to the computer. It spits out. I think there's some talk of this by the government. I think it's very important to go in this direction. Here are 3 or 4 suspicious situations. And then have those investigated. But also maintain a record of the investigating officer. What is their performance on all these investigations? Are there, on average, less than warranted collections? But what you don't want is the collection to be done into the investigative officer's own space, rather than going into the public exchequer. So I think all these checks and balances can be built in. We have the capacity to do that. We already collect information on car purchases, this, that.
Yeah, we have a lot of data.
Yeah, can we look at that and spit out?
If we had done that, we wouldn't have needed demonetization.
I think they work on 2 different aspects. This works on the flow. In order to shut off the flow of new untaxed money, of black money. That works, demonetization works on the stock. If you had stored the black money in your basement, the hope was to get at that. So they do 2 different things, but ultimately if we don't stop the flow, we haven't finished. And I think some of this talk about putting, that the government is talking about, RBI, we have proposed this on numerous occasions, have the unique ID attached to every deposit account. Because PAN number is duplicated, unique ID is not. Those would be ways of narrowing the space for black money. And I think in the longer run, if you tell people, hide the money, there's a high likelihood you'll be caught, the incentive to do that falls. And ultimately, if we have a broad tax base, our tax rates are not that high. If we have a broad tax base, everybody's paying, we can build those roads, build those schools that we actually need.
I want to go back to our first interview, which was in January of 2014. And you, at that time, and I wouldn't use the word hit out, but you had at that time flagged off concerns about the manner in which central banks of the developed world were going on their own without taking developing countries and their central banks on board. And that became a huge issue. You eventually spoke about it, and you mentioned that in your book as well. How is the global picture looking right now? The US, Europe, and the rest of the world, you've been in the last 1 year closer there. So if you can give us a sense of the global picture, the global economy, how according to you is it looking?
Short term looks good. All the economies, all the big economies seem to be doing reasonably well. Not spectacularly, but reasonably. Japan, Europe, US, China. There are problems in some of them. China, of course, the bad debt issue has to be resolved. They're doing They're taking a crack at it. They seem to have been making some progress, but it's still an issue that they have to resolve. The US, some of the travails of the new administration, can they get the tax plan through, for example? And also this whole anti-immigrant movement, if it gains steam, then here's an economy near full employment. If you try and push out a significant part of the undocumented labor force, you better have documented labor to substitute, else you get shortages, and then you get the rise in wage inflation and the effects on monetary policy. So each of these areas has underlying medium-term problems. Short-term, they all look reasonably good, which then puts the risk, the potential downside risk, on two areas. One, a tight labor market, which then for the first time shows higher inflation, which means monetary policy has to move faster. And the second is geopolitical risks. Countries threatening to bomb each other out of existence. How seriously should we take that? Can they dial back some of these concerns? That's something we have to wait and watch.
इंडिया की बात करते हैं, और क्या आप मानते हैं डॉक्टर राजन के, क्योंकि आप यूथ जो है उनके लिए आप एक आइकन है, आज जो सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है इस देश में और जिस पे कोई ज़्यादा बात करना नहीं चाहता, वो है जॉब्स की,
रोजगार।
क्या आप मानते हैं कि ये एक बहुत ही बड़ी क्राइसिस है? क्योंकि एक तरफ ये देश एक यंग कंट्री सो टू स्पीक है, और सारे जो डेटा आ रही है वो यही कह रही है कि और कुछ सालों में और भी यंग हो जाएगी ये पॉपुलेशन, और जॉब्स है नहीं। क्या आप मानते हैं ये आपको चिंतित करता है कि जॉब्स?
ये सबसे बड़ी समस्या है हमारे सामने कि क्या हम सब ये जो जवान लोग हैं सबको नौकरी दे पाएंगे कि नहीं। और प्रॉब्लम ये है कि जो भी हम शुरू करें, जो भी जहाँ से भी ग्रोथ आ रही है वो जॉब इंटेंसिव ग्रोथ नहीं है। जैसे कि हमारे जो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग है वो टिपिकली कैपिटल इंटेंसिव मैन्युफैक्चरिंग है, जो बड़ी मैन्युफैक्चरिंग है। और आजकल तो कृषि में तो नौकरी नहीं है, बना सकते हैं। वैल्यू एडेड एग्रीकल्चर भी हम वहाँ पे काफ़ी इन्वेस्टमेंट कर सकते हैं, लेकिन अभी तक ज़्यादा नहीं कर रहे हैं। सो दिस इज़ आई थिंक एन इशू वी हैव टू पे ट्रिमेंडस अटेंशन टू। और इसमें दो साइड हैं। एक ये है कि क्या नौकरी हैं, लेकिन दूसरी साइड ये है कि क्या लोग हैं जिनके पास वो स्किल्स हैं कि वो नौकरी कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज दे फाइंड दे नॉट गेटिंग लेबर which is at competitive rates with the adequate skills that they need. Part of the problem is our schooling system. Our high school educated workers are not comparable to the high school educated workers elsewhere, and we have far fewer of them than we need.
Economic growth continues to slide, and while most of the commentary ends up being that this is because of that 1 quarter of demonetization, 1 quarter of GST, but if you see the trend line over the last couple of years, much before demonetization happened, we've been on a slowing growth path. And even after these new numbers which came out on GDP, and if you were to compare with the older numbers, we're probably sub 5%.
Yeah.
Is that something that concerns you? And what needs to be done, 2 or 3 things to fix this?
Absolutely of concern, and this is why I was drumming on the table, because I think a big reason for this is bank balance sheets. And you said it's been happening for some time. From 2014, public sector bank credit has been slowing relative to private sector bank credit. So this is, you can't say it's a system. The private sector banks were able to lend, the public sector weren't. And that was because the balance sheets were deteriorating in quality. So that is why we started this process, which I talk about in the book. We have to clean up the bank balance sheets, we have to recapitalize the banks, otherwise credit growth is going to be very low, and that has a multiplier effect on the economy. It creates an environment of low sentiment, of low willingness to take risk, etc. Bank cleanup cleanup of the stressed firms. That is a priority number one. Exports have been falling when the rest of Asia is growing in exports. Exports are often a sign of your fundamental lack of competitiveness. Typically, people look at the exchange rate. Exchange rate is not the single most important thing. It is what is your underlying capabilities in the export sector. And we have to see what is going wrong, because exports was a success story in the first 10 years of this century. That our exports were growing tremendously. And we had highly competitive firms. Why is that story not re-emerging as the world strengthens once again? Why is it other countries' exports are growing, not ours? This is a serious issue we need to look into.
Dr. Rajan, the investment cycle, the capex cycle hasn't turned. Earnings haven't turned. Every quarter we ask analysts, do you expect earnings to turn? And they say yes, hopefully next quarter. And now they're all eating their own words. They're saying for 4 years we've been saying this. And yet you have the stock markets at all-time highs. Now, I know you don't comment on stock markets, but the reason I'm asking you this is because due to the effort of a lot of institutions, including the RBI, we've actually started seeing over the last 1 or 2 years a lot of small investors, retail investors moving to financial assets. And therefore I'm asking you this question, that do you feel somewhere that there is a lot of irrational exuberance building on this hope, that in the next 2 years markets are futuristic, fair enough, but do you think somewhere this hope is riding a bit too fast and high, that things are going to get much better, the worst is over, or do you think we're going to go through a bit of pain before we're able to address and get back to the 8-10% kind of growth?
But I think it'll take a little bit of time to get back to 8 and 10. Let's say 8 first and then worry about 10 later. But I do think markets discount the long run. And so hopefully they're right about the long run. There will be short-term volatility that goes without saying in the markets.
8 या 10%, 8% की बात करते हैं डॉक्टर राजन, तक पहुंचने में आप मानते हैं और 2 या 3 साल भी लग सकते हैं इस देश को?
मेरे ख्याल में ये जो शॉर्ट टर्म जो धक्के पड़े हैं वो तो 1-2 क्वार्टर्स में चले जाएंगे, लेकिन आगे जब देखेंगे तो हम 8 तक पहुंच पा रहे थे। ये जो मेरे ख्याल में मार्च 2016 में या जून में हम 7.8, 7.9 तक पहुंचे थे, तो फिर पहुंच सकते हैं वहाँ पे। लेकिन ये सब जो चीज़ें जो मैंने अभी बताया है, जैसे कि इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, स्टॉल्ड प्रोजेक्ट्स, इन पे ध्यान देना चाहिए। अगर हम देख सकते हैं इसमें क्या इम्पेडिमेंट्स हैं, उनको फिक्स कर सकते हैं, तो अगर वो सब कर सकते हैं तो मेरे ख्याल में 8 तो हो सकता है।
लेकिन समय लगेगा।
समय तो लगेगा।
और जो छोटे निवेशक हैं, अगर आपको देख रहे हैं और देखते हैं और सुनते हैं आपको बहुत सीरियसली, आप उनसे कहेंगे कि हालांकि एक अच्छी बात है कि अब आप फाइनली बैंक में अपने पैसे रखने की बजाय या चिट फंड में रखने की बजाय एक फाइनेंशियल मार्केट में आ रहे हैं म्यूचुअल फंड्स के जरिए, लेकिन थोड़ा कॉशियस रहिए।
हाँ, मैं ये तो ज़रूर कहूँगा कि एक तो डाइवर्सिफाई कीजिए, थोड़ा बैंक में रखिए, थोड़ा रियल एस्टेट में, थोड़ा स्टॉक मार्केट में। सब पैसे लेके स्टॉक मार्केट में मत डालिए, वो तो उसमें काफ़ी नुकसान पड़ सकती है। और दूसरा ये है कि अगर आप स्टॉक मार्केट में पैसे डाल रहे हैं तो जनरली काफ़ी डाइवर्सिफाई करके डालिए, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में थोड़ा, फाइनेंस में थोड़ा, और लॉन्ग टर्म के लिए रखिए। ये नहीं कि एक साल में अगर नुकसान पड़े तो आप निकालें। जनरली अगर आप लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टर्स हैं तब आपको फ़ायदा होगा, लेकिन अगर आप शॉर्ट टर्म में पैसे निकालेंगे तो प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है।
एक आखिरी सवाल आपसे, ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस, इस पर भी बहुत बातें हुई और सक्सेसिव जो रैंकिंग्स आ रही है हम वहीं के वहीं हैं। 1-2 नॉच हम बेटर हो जाते हैं और फिर हम चेस्ट थम्पिंग शुरू कर देते हैं कि हमने बहुत इंप्रूवमेंट करी, लेकिन अभी भी वी आर 130 odd. Do you believe that on that front, we've just not been able to crack it?
See, I think that we should not target the World Bank index or some other index. It should be seen as a measure of how well we are doing, but let us not target the specific elements we look at. If you come down to 20 on that, you still may be a terrible place to do business. What we have to look at is ask our business people कि problem कहाँ हो रही है आपको. If we ask that question, you will soon get 10 different things. Now, can we try and solve those issues? इंस्पेक्टर आ जाता है, कहता है कि आपका बॉयलर कहाँ है, और आप कहेंगे कि मेरे पास तो बॉयलर नहीं है, तो पूछेंगे कि बॉयलर क्यों नहीं है. I mean, you have
Similarly, tax terror.
हाँ, tax
नोटिस पे नोटिस आ रहे हैं, बैंक के थ्रू आ रहे हैं.
तो मेरे ख्याल में ये जो irritants हैं, and sometimes hurdles because you create the opportunity for corruption. And then some genuine hurdles जैसे land acquisition, क्योंकि 10 ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से परमिशन लेना पड़ता है, और वो टाइटल जो है जो लैंड की वो तो पता नहीं गायब है, किसी को नहीं पता कि ये किसका ज़मीन है. तो all those problems we need to tackle, and it's not a short term fix. It's not you can see every 3 months, but it is a mindset कि हम इसको काटेंगे, उसको काटेंगे. We're going to make it easier to do business. See, the problem you see is that you're cutting into the turf of sort of entities that value that turf. So you have to resist their attempt to recapture it. And that requires steady progress, and if they try and recapture it, you have to push back. That's I think harder than targeting an index. I think an index is a good measure of how far you've come, but if you target the specific elements, you really haven't done what you need to do.
आपने अपनी किताब में लिखा कि जब आप वापस जा रहे थे अपना टर्म खत्म करके, जो सिक्योरिटी के जो ऑफिशियल्स थे एयरपोर्ट ने उसने स्टैम्प किया और आपसे पूछा वापस कब आएंगे.
हाँ,
क्या आपने उनको क्या जवाब?
मैंने कहा मैं तो आता रहूँगा, और जब देश की ज़रूरत है तो मैं परमानेंटली आऊँगा, लेकिन मैं तो आता रहूँगा. अभी मेरा तो काम है उधर, मेरा रिसर्च चल रहा है, मैं किताबें लिख रहा हूँ, पेपर्स लिख रहा हूँ, लेकिन यहाँ पे भी एक आंख तो इस कोने में है, देख रही है कि यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है, और देखते हैं.
आपने 1 साल का मौन व्रत किया, उम्मीद करते हैं कि अब आप बात करेंगे और करते रहेंगे.
थोड़ा तो करूँगा,
और जो एक मिरर है वो दिखाते रहेंगे. Thank you very much and wish you all the very best.
शुक्रिया.
Thank you.